Yesterday, the world marked the International Day of Disaster Risk Reduction. Today, the country is hosting the week-long 10th session of the Asia-Pacific Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction at the Philippine International Convention Center. Now, to tell us more about it, we have on the phone Department of Science and Technology Secretary Renato Solidum. Good morning, Sec. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Paolo.
Secretary, tell us a bit more about this conference, sino po ang mga participants, and of course, what is the overall goal of this conference?
Yes, the Asia-Pacific Ministerial Conference on Disaster Reduction is a regional conference after the Global Platform on Disaster Risk Reduction. Essentially, ministers, heads of organizations, non-government organizations, the private industry, and disaster risk reduction advocates will be attending the conference. Around at least 68 nations will be participating. It's not only the Asia Pacific, but there will be participants from other countries like the European Union, and more than 4,500 registered. Essentially, this will review the overall efforts done by each country according to the Sendai Framework on Disaster Risk Reduction, which started 2015 up to 2030, and then look into the possible innovations and science, technology, and innovation that might help us further reduce the impact of natural hazards and climate change, and commit for certain actionable items so that we can further improve on our effort to reduce the impacts of natural hazards and climate change.
Secretary, it's obvious that the DOST will play a big role with regards to how we here in the Philippines do react to disasters. Anong mga priorities po ninyo with regards to this particular task?
Well, in essence, the Department of Science and Technology have been developing and applying innovative solutions or applying existing solutions, even from other countries, to improve our forecasting on weather, on geophysical events like earthquakes and volcanic eruptions and tsunami. But more so, we need to look into the projections of climate change so that we can proactively prepare for this global threat. Second, we have been producing applications so that people will understand the localized threat. The focus of this conference is to look at the localization of efforts at the community level, and the Philippines is one of the leading countries there, and make sure that people understand not only the phenomenon, but also what they need to do. But at the national level and local level, we need to look at the governance issue where financing must also be considered, because many efforts need some funding, so that we need to look into the private sector as well.
Yeah. Secretary, you did mention funding. The DOST in particular does fund a multi-agency initiative called GeoRisk Philippines. Can you tell us a bit more about yung initiative na to, and of course, give us a bit of an update on its implementation so far?
Yes, the GeoRisk Philippines was conceptualized way back in 2018 when I was still the head of the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, and this was funded by DOST, and essentially this created a governance and information communication technology platform where hazards information from mandated government organization are shared and collated with specific standards and coding system so that everything will be interoperable. Second, other agencies that have their own data sets, like DepEd, DOH, would now share all the data that they have so that we can assess the risk of these critical facilities. We have developed 4 applications by now. The first is the Hazard Hunter, where one can actually assess the hazard in less than a minute for any point in the Philippines. And we have a Hazard Hunter Pro where you can actually, per batch, include 100 points and everything can be assessed, all those 100 points in 1 minute. The second is Geoanalytic PH, where one can visualize the exposure to hazards per land area of people by sex, by age. The third is the QMapper, where one can collect all the data that are needed And most importantly now, we have developed the only automated planning so far in the world, the Plant Smart Ready to Rebuild. And these would hasten the creation of recovery plans for local governments that have been affected by disasters.
Well, Secretary, it's obvious we're seeing the technology being a part of the information dissemination, information gathering. But then when in regards to disaster preparedness and actual resilience, especially with regards to climate change and climate-related incidents that the country has been experiencing, how would you rate yung country po natin in terms of preparedness, in terms of, we always use the term resilience, but then how would you rate the country's ability to cope with all of these events?
Well, if you look at the recent global World Risk Index, we're number one. And so, and the reason why we're number one is despite the fact that we have improved on science, the vulnerability is still very high simply because people are still staying in identified hazard areas. We haven't enacted the National Land Use Act, which would actually define where people can stay and not stay. Second, we need to also increase the capability of people, especially structures, so that they can withstand strong earthquakes and typhoons. So all of these need to be focused now on the vulnerability side, where people need to be encouraged to really prepare as an individual, as a family, and as a community. But in essence, when it comes to climate change, these must be approached through a sectoral campaign where we need to focus on agriculture, health, water supply, and of course the livelihood that will be affected by climate change.
Secretary, if we could have you a bit longer, we could tape a podcast episode, but unfortunately, we are running out of time. Really appreciate for you for coming on the show. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you very
sir.
much.
All right, that was the DOST Secretary Renato Solidum.